There is a moment, every man overlooks a moment, that reveals whether he is forgettable or unforgettable. It's not when he texts her. It's not when he compliments her. It's not even when he walks away. It's the moment she realizes something she'll never say out loud: "I'll never meet another man like him again." Women pretend they move on easily. They pretend they don't care. They pretend the silence doesn't reach them. But the truth she hides even from herself, is that only one kind of man stays in her mind long after he's gone. Not the man who chased. Not the man who proved himself. Not the man who bent to keep her. But the man whose presence changed her and whose absence exposed her. The man who didn't need her attention to feel valuable. The man who stayed calm when she expected chaos. The man who walked away with dignity instead of desperation. That man becomes a psychological echo, a standard, a reference point. A shadow she compares every other man to, even years later. If you've ever wondered what makes a man truly unforgettable, why certain men stay in a woman's mind no matter how hard she tries to forget them, you're about to understand the truth no one has ever told you. Let's begin. Every man enters a woman's life with a certain presence, some loud, some chaotic, some predictable, some soft, some forgotten almost instantly. But only very few men carry a presence that stays with her long after the last message, long after the last argument, long after she's convinced herself she's moved on. This presence is not built on chasing, impressing, or overwhelming her with attention. It's built on something far quieter, yet far more powerful. An emotional signature, a psychological imprint she did not consciously choose to feel, yet once felt, becomes almost impossible to erase. Most men misunderstand this. They believe women remember gestures, words, dates, or romantic moments. They imagine she replays the kisses, the conversations, the laughs. But in reality, her memory is not chronological, it is emotional. She does not rewatch the relationship like a movie. She relives the way she felt around you. A woman remembers the man whose presence awakened a new version of herself. Not the man who chased her. Not the man who needed her. Not the man who collapsed every time she pulled away. She remembers the man who created internal movement in her, the man who stirred emotions she couldn't control, who mirrored patterns she couldn't hide, who made her feel both safe and challenged at the same time. That kind of man becomes unforgettable because he is not just a memory, he is a shift. When she met you, something inside her changed, even if neither of you realized it at first. She felt calmer, more feminine, more expressive, more exposed, more herself. Some women even feel anxious around such men, not because the man is doing anything wrong, but because he is showing her parts of herself she isn't ready to confront. But the strongest emotional signature is born from something even deeper. You didn't need anything from her. Your presence wasn't built on approval. Your behavior wasn't driven by insecurity. Your value wasn't tied to her reactions. This is rare in the modern world. Most men she meets are thirsty for validation. They bend quickly, apologize too fast, reveal too much, and panic at the slightest sign of distance. These men give her emotional power without even knowing it. But you, You didn't surrender your center. You listened without trying to impress. You spoke without trying to convince. You existed without trying to be chosen. And that alone created a magnetic tension she wasn't prepared for. Instead of grabbing for her attention, you let her give it. Instead of chasing her validation, you validated yourself. Instead of bending to her emotions, you stood still in your own. This inner stillness acted like a mirror, reflecting her patterns back to her. It made her see where she was guarded, inconsistent, reactive, or unsure. And the strange paradox of feminine psychology is this: a woman remembers the man who made her meet herself, not the man who entertained her, the man who transformed her. There are men she forgets within days because they never reached beneath her surface. But you slipped past every defense, not by force, not by manipulation, but by simply being grounded in a way she rarely encounters. And this grounding did something profound. It made her feel safe and vulnerable and seen all at once. These are not ordinary feelings. These are emotional markers deep, neurological imprints that tie a moment to a man forever. And here is what makes your emotional signature unforgettable. You didn't perform for her. You didn't negotiate your worth. You didn't collapse when she tested your boundaries. You didn't rush into her world. You allowed her to enter yours. Women rarely forget this type of man because he becomes a reference point, a standard, a psychological watermark against which all future men are unconsciously measured. Even years later, when she meets someone new, she may not compare consciously, but her body and her emotional system remember, this doesn't feel like him. This doesn't calm me the same way. This doesn't challenge me like before. This doesn't awaken that part of me. Every man after you will unknowingly compete with a ghost, the ghost of your presence. Not because you tried to be unforgettable, not because you forced an identity, but because you lived with intention, not reaction. Your emotional signature is not something you crafted. It is something you embodied. A man who is grounded becomes memorable. A man who respects himself becomes magnetic. A man who does not chase becomes a mystery. A man who can walk away becomes a lesson. And lessons, those do not fade. This is why she replays moments with you, not because she wants the relationship back, but because she wants the version of herself that came alive in your presence. That's the mark of an unforgettable man. You didn't just enter her life. You rewired her emotional world. And once that happens, there is no version of her that can ever truly forget you. There's a moment, a very specific, unmistakable moment, when a woman finally understands that the man she walked away from wasn't just another chapter in her story. He was the turning point. And this realization doesn't happen quickly. It doesn't happen when you're texting her, calling her, or trying to explain yourself. It happens after you're gone. Not because you disappeared, but because your absence revealed something your presence never had to prove. You were different. In the beginning, she assumed she knew you. She assumed you would behave like every man before you. She assumed she could predict you, influence you, and emotionally navigate you the way she'd navigated countless others. She assumed your stability was an act. Your calmness was a tactic. Your presence was a phase. She assumed wrong. A woman approaches new men with subconscious expectations, patterns she's learned from her past, stories she tells herself about how men behave, assumptions about how easily they can be swayed or controlled by attraction. And most men, without realizing it, fall neatly into these expectations. They chase when she pulls away. They soften when she raises her voice. They over-explain when she gets silent. They collapse emotionally the moment they sense distance. These reactions affirm her worldview. I know how men operate. But then, she meets a man like you. A man who doesn't bend for validation, who doesn't panic at uncertainty, who doesn't argue for the sake of approval, who doesn't lose himself when he likes someone. You didn't fight for attention, you carried attention. You didn't try to be chosen, you chose yourself first. You didn't treat her as a trophy, you treated yourself as the prize. And that is what disrupted her expectations. At first, she couldn't process it. She assumed your calmness was temporary, your confidence fragile, your boundaries negotiable. Women often test unconsciously, not to destroy connection, but to understand its strength. So she tested you. She waited for you to overreact. You didn't. She went cold, expecting panic. You stayed grounded. She pulled back, expecting you to chase harder. You let her walk. She created distance, expecting you to fill the silence. You filled it with your purpose instead. This was the moment the cracks began forming in her assumptions. Because every time she expected a predictable reaction from you, she encountered something she didn't have a script for, a man in control of himself. And women remember men who control themselves far more than men who try to control the situation. At some point, maybe in a quiet moment at night, maybe during a conversation with friends, maybe when comparing you to someone new, she feels the shift. Why didn't he react? Why didn't he chase? Why was he so calm? Why do I still think about him? That last question is the one that breaks her internal narrative. A woman doesn't become attached to men she can predict. She becomes attached to men she can't quite understand, but deeply feel. And that's the moment she realizes you weren't like the others. You didn't need her. But you chose her. Men who need a woman are forgettable. Men who choose a woman from a place of strength become unforgettable. She replayed the moments you didn't fall apart. She replayed the times you stood your ground. She replayed the silence you held with confidence instead of fear. She replayed the way you maintained your identity even when emotions were high. Most men crumble when their feelings grow. You didn't. You remained yourself. That kind of consistency is rare, almost unheard of, in a world filled with emotional impulsiveness. And that rarity is what imprints itself on her memory. A woman may forget the man who overwhelmed her with affection. She may forget the man who entertained her with charm. She may forget the man who tried too hard to win her approval. But she never forgets the man whose strength forced her to confront her own emotional patterns. You were not an escape. You were a mirror. You were not a phase. You were a shift. You were not another experience. You were the recalibration. She might not say it. She might never admit it. She might pretend your silence doesn't reach her. But inside, at a level she can't express, she knows the truth. She did not lose a man. She lost the only man who wouldn't lose himself for her. And that is when you become unforgettable. Here's something she will never say out loud. Not to her friends. Not to the man she's seeing now. Not even to herself. Every man she meets after you is walking into a quiet, invisible competition, and he has already lost. Not because he's a bad man. Not because he lacks potential. Not because he isn't trying. He loses because her mind has already formed a reference point, and that reference point is you. Women compare emotionally, not logically. They don't compare faces, bodies, status, or achievements. They compare feelings. How did I feel around him? How do I feel now? What did he awaken in me that this man cannot? And the moment you become the emotional standard, the comparison becomes automatic, unconscious, relentless. It begins in small moments. A new man texts her too much. She remembers how you didn't need constant attention. A new man replies too fast. She remembers how you moved at your own pace. A new man gets jealous or insecure. She remembers how nothing shook your presence. A new man tries to impress her. She remembers how you impressed her without trying. She doesn't want to compare. She tries not to. She might even feel guilty for doing it. But the comparison continues because she's not comparing men. She's comparing versions of herself, her with them versus her with you. And that is a war they cannot win. Because the version of herself she became around you, the softer, calmer, more feminine, more open version, wasn't something you forced. It was something your presence pulled out of her. She felt safer around you without knowing why. She felt more grounded without understanding how. She felt more feminine without you asking for it. That emotional shift was not about what you did. It was about who you were. And when a woman experiences that kind of emotional resonance, every man after you will feel like an imitation. Not because he is weak, but because he doesn't have the one thing you carried effortlessly: internal equilibrium, emotional discipline, masculine calm. These qualities cannot be faked. They cannot be performed. They cannot be maintained by a man who hasn't done the inner work. So when she meets someone new, the comparison grows deeper. He gets upset easily. You stayed composed. He tries to impress her with attention. You impressed her with standards. He tries to win her affection. You never competed for what wasn't meant for you. He reacts emotionally. You responded with intention. He loses himself in uncertainty. You stayed rooted even in silence. These things don't just make you memorable, they make you irreplaceable. Because what she felt with you wasn't excitement. It wasn't dopamine. It wasn't attraction alone. It was emotional balance. It was masculine gravity. It was psychological stability. And that stability made her feel a version of herself she can't recreate with others. That's why months later, sometimes even years later, your name still crosses her mind when she least expects it. She hears a tone of voice that reminds her of you. She remembers the way you paused before you spoke. She remembers the way you walked away without resentment. She remembers the calm in your eyes when things were falling apart. These memories are not nostalgia. They are comparisons. Silent comparisons that the new man never knows he's competing against. She might tell herself she's moved on. She might convince her friends she's better off. She might even force herself to believe she made the right decision. But her emotions don't lie, because deep down, she knows no one else gives her the internal stillness you gave her. Not the rush, not the thrill, not the drama. The stillness, the feeling of being safe in her own femininity, the feeling of being understood without performing, the feeling of being deeply desired without being overwhelmed, the feeling of being seen without speaking. That's the comparison she can't escape. It's not about wanting you back. It's not about missing the relationship. It's not about regret. It's about the emotional identity she had when she was with you, a version of herself she cannot recreate with someone else. That's what haunts her. That's what keeps you alive in her memory. That's why she lies awake some nights wondering how she lost a man like you. Not because you were perfect, but because you were complete. And a man who is complete within himself is a man no woman ever forgets. There is a kind of emptiness a woman doesn't feel with most men. An emptiness so subtle, so unexpected, that she doesn't even recognize it at first. It doesn't show up when a man leaves her messages on read. It doesn't show up when a man stops trying. It doesn't show up when she walks away from a guy she was never invested in. It only appears when a rare man disappears, a man whose presence created internal balance without her noticing, and whose absence destroys that balance instantly. That emptiness is the void. And only a small fraction of men in her lifetime ever create it. Most men leave behind inconvenience, a little annoyance, a little disappointment, a little silence. But you leave behind something far more disruptive, a psychological void she cannot fill. Not with attention, not with distractions, not with someone new, not even with time. Because the void isn't created by losing you, it's created by losing the emotional equilibrium your presence provided. The void begins where your energy used to be. When you were around her, even in the smallest ways, your presence added weight to her emotional world. You didn't calm her by saying the right things, your energy did that on its own. You didn't ground her by controlling the moment, your masculinity silently shaped the moment for both of you. You didn't stabilize her mood, your internal stability automatically balanced her internal chaos. You became, without effort, the center of gravity in her emotional landscape. She didn't notice it at first, because true masculine presence never announces itself. It just is. But the moment that gravity disappears, everything inside her shifts. The ground feels less steady. The air feels less warm. Her emotions feel less contained. That shift, the imbalance she can't explain, is the beginning of the void. The void grows because she cannot recreate what you gave her. Here's the truth she will never admit: she wasn't addicted to you. She was addicted to the version of herself she became around you. Your presence brought out her softness. Your calm awakened her femininity. Your steadiness tamed her emotional storms. Your identity made hers feel more secure. And when that energy vanishes, she doesn't just miss the man, she misses the emotional version of herself that only existed with that man. That's what makes the void unbearable. Not missing you, but missing herself with you. The void cannot be filled with another man. She will try. Oh, she will try. She will talk to someone new. She will flirt. She will distract herself. She will tell her friends she's fine. She will tell herself she's fine. But the void remains, because the void wasn't created by lack of attention. It was created by the loss of equilibrium. Other men can give her attention. Other men can give her validation. Other men can give her excitement. Other men can even give her affection. But they cannot give her internal balance. Because balance doesn't come from effort, it comes from identity. A man who is centered creates a centered woman. A man who is stable creates stability in her. A man who is emotionally grounded anchors the emotional world around him. Most men don't carry that. They don't even carry themselves. So when she stands next to them, she feels the contrast instantly. Where you were calm, he is reactive. Where you were steady, he is inconsistent. Where you were intentional, he is impulsive. Where you were grounded, he is insecure. The void stretches wider, and she feels it even if she refuses to acknowledge it. The void becomes a mirror reflecting what she lost. At some point, usually late at night when her mind is quiet, the void stops being a feeling and becomes a mirror. In that mirror she sees the strength she didn't appreciate, the presence she took for granted, the balance she assumed she'd always find again, the version of herself she didn't know how to hold on to, and most of all, the man she didn't realize was irreplaceable. This is when the void becomes permanent, not painful, not dramatic, not overwhelming, just permanent, a quiet reminder of the man whose absence reshaped her inner world more than his presence ever did. Because only rare men do that. Men who are whole, men who are balanced, men who are sovereign, men who walk away when their boundaries are crossed, men who choose self-respect over emotional chaos. These are the men who enter a woman's life like a chapter and leave like a lesson she spends years trying to unlearn. Men who leave not emptiness but a void only their presence can fill. And that void is the reason she may forget the relationship, but she will never forget the man. There is one trait, one energy, one force that haunts a woman long after a man is gone. Not his charm, not his looks, not his humor, not even the connection they once shared. It's his self-respect. Self-respect is the masculine signature she can't erase. No matter how far she runs or who she tries to replace you with. Because while desire attracts her, while chemistry excites her, while connection pulls her in, your self-respect is what marks her. It's what separates you from every other man she's ever known. She remembers the man who refused to lose himself for her. Most men collapse under the pressure of feminine emotion. They fold when she pulls away. They chase when she withdraws. They panic when she goes silent. They break boundaries just to avoid losing her. And she remembers every single one of them as the same man. Repeated in different faces. Forgettable, predictable, replaceable. But you were different. You didn't react to her emotional storms. You didn't negotiate your boundaries. You didn't sacrifice your identity to keep her comfortable. You didn't distort your masculinity to satisfy her insecurity. You were willing to walk away the moment she tested the foundation of your respect. And that is what she cannot forget. Because in that moment, the moment she expected you to bend, and instead watched you stand firm, you revealed something rare. You respected yourself more than you desired her. And that truth imprints itself in a woman's long-term memory with a permanence that even love cannot match. She's not haunted by losing you, she's haunted by what she couldn't break. Women don't test men to be cruel. They test men to feel their strength. Every emotional push, every moment of distance, every sudden shift in tone is a probe into one question: can he maintain himself in the face of me? Most men fail instantly. They become emotional reflections of her energy. If she is anxious, they become anxious. If she is distant, they start begging. If she is silent, they suffocate her with messages. But when she tested you, when she pulled back to see if you'd collapse, you didn't chase. You didn't lose your frame. You didn't lose your dignity. You didn't lose your masculine center. She was expecting a reaction, and instead you gave her a boundary. Expecting desperation, and instead you gave her distance. Expecting emotional chaos, and instead you gave her calm. She discovered something about you she did not expect. You were unbreakable. And no woman forgets the man she could not break. Your self-respect became the mirror she wasn't ready to face. Here's the part she'll never admit. Your self-respect exposed her lack of it. Your boundaries made her confront her own. Your discipline highlighted her impulsiveness. Your calmness revealed her internal chaos. Your emotional control reminded her how reactive she can be. You didn't shame her. You didn't correct her. You didn't even point it out. Your presence simply reflected it. And when you walked away with dignity, not anger, not resentment, not manipulation, you left her alone with that mirror. That mirror is what haunts her. Because self-respect is not a trait she can imitate in the next man. It is not something she can demand. It is not something she can manufacture. It is a masculine essence that must be lived. And you lived it. She forgets the men who wanted her. She remembers the man who wanted himself more. Here is the paradox that defines female psychology. She forgets the men who worship her. She forgets the men who sacrifice everything to keep her. She forgets the men who make her their purpose. These men blur together because their love is rooted in neediness. But she remembers the man who loved himself more. Because that man, the man who protects his peace, the man who chooses clarity over chaos, the man who remains sovereign even in intimacy, the man who will not betray his values for validation, that man becomes a mental landmark in her emotional history, a reference point, a standard, a reminder, not of romance, but of masculine integrity. She may meet men more handsome than you. She may meet men wealthier than you. She may meet men more expressive, more exciting, more available. But she will not meet another man whose self-respect reshaped the way she views masculinity. That imprint lasts a lifetime. This is the real reason your memory lingers, not because she loved you more, not because the relationship was perfect, not because the chemistry was unmatched, but because you were the man she could not influence and the man she could not replace. Your self-respect was a presence. Your boundaries were a lesson. Your silence was a statement. Your detachment was a testament. You embodied the rarest gift a man can give a woman, the example of a man who will not abandon himself even for her. That is why she remembers you. That is why you haunt her. That is why she will always return to the thought of you when the world grows quiet. You were not unforgettable because of what you gave her. You were unforgettable because of what you refused to give up yourself. There is a fear, quiet, private, unspoken, that grows inside a woman long after a man like you is gone. A fear she hides behind confidence, behind new conversations, behind her social life, behind her pride. A fear she would never confess to her friends, never whisper to a journal, never admit, even in the privacy of her own thoughts. It is the fear that keeps resurfacing in moments she can't control. The fear that visits her when the world goes still. The fear that tightens her chest when she sees your name or hears something that reminds her of you. And that fear is simple. She is terrified that she will never meet another man like you again. Not someone better. Not someone similar. Not someone who matches your energy. No, she fears she has already crossed paths with a once-in-a-lifetime man, and she lost him without understanding what she had. Her fear begins the moment the illusion breaks. In the beginning, she walks away with confidence. She believes she has options. She believes you were replaceable. She believes she will feel the same way with someone new. Why? Because most women never understand the value of a man until they feel the absence of him. When she first meets someone new, everything looks promising. He is attentive. He is eager. He is impressed by her. He reacts the way she expects men to react. But slowly, piece by piece, the illusion breaks. She notices he gets insecure easily. He overreacts to small shifts in emotion. His confidence is loud, not grounded. His presence feels unstable. His validation feels desperate. His affection feels needy. She starts to sense something she didn't expect. He isn't you, and he can't become you. This is where her fear begins, in the space between what she hoped to feel and what she actually feels. Her fear deepens when she realizes your calmness wasn't an act. Most men pretend to be confident. It lasts a week, maybe a month. Then the mask slips. But your calmness, your emotional silence, your self-possession, your ability to remain grounded even when she was unpredictable, those qualities weren't a performance. They were who you are. And while other men falter the moment she tests them, you remained unmoved, not out of arrogance, but out of mastery. This is when the fear intensifies. She realizes your emotional discipline wasn't you holding back. Your boundaries weren't manipulation. Your silence wasn't punishment. Your steadiness wasn't lack of feelings. Your distance wasn't disinterest. All of it was self-control. All of it was a man governed by his principles, not his impulses. The modern world rarely produces men like that, and she knows it. Her fear transforms into regret when she sees your life move without her. Nothing haunts a woman more than watching a man she once had access to continue rising without her. She sees your focus, your growth, your discipline, your new habits, your new confidence, your new peace. She sees a man who didn't collapse when she left, a man who didn't chase, a man who redirected his energy inward instead of begging outward. This is when her fear evolves into something darker, regret. Because regret is not sadness, it's correction. It's her mind trying to rewrite the past because the reality of losing you feels too heavy to accept. She realizes you were not a man trying to win her. You were a man trying to build yourself. And that type of man doesn't come back. That type of man doesn't orbit around her. That type of man doesn't wait. That type of man doesn't pause his life for anyone. Regret hits hardest when she sees you becoming the man she always hoped you would become, and she is no longer part of the story. Her fear becomes permanent when she understands the truth. She wasn't ready for a man like you. This is the deepest layer of her fear. The realization that she lost you not because you lacked value, but because she lacked readiness. You forced her to confront emotional maturity. You challenged her without trying. You mirrored her insecurities without saying a word. You awakened a part of her that required growth, and she wasn't ready to rise to that level. She feared your calm because it highlighted her chaos. She feared your boundaries because they exposed her lack of them. She feared your confidence because it outshined her insecurities. She feared your depth because she was used to superficial validation. She feared your independence because she didn't know how to meet you on equal ground. And now, she carries a fear she can never admit. The next time she meets a man like you, she will be ready, but he won't be you. There is no second chance with rare men, and she knows it. Her fear locks in when she realizes you didn't lose anything she did. A powerful shift happens in her mind. At first, she thinks you lost her. Then she thinks both of you lost something. Finally, she realizes she was the only one who truly lost. Because you didn't lose your identity. You didn't lose your center. You didn't lose your future. You didn't lose your standards. You didn't lose your self-respect. You didn't even lose love, because the love you gave was rooted in your abundance, not in your emptiness. But she lost a man who could have transformed her emotional world, a man who elevated her, a man who challenged her, a man who grounded her, a man who awakened a version of herself she now misses, a man who demanded she rise instead of fall into comfort, a man she will spend years comparing others to. This is the fear she never speaks. What if he was the best I will ever have? Not sexually, not romantically, not financially, but emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, energetically. What if she already met the rarest man she'll ever encounter, and she wasn't aware enough to keep him? That fear does not fade. That fear does not weaken. That fear does not disappear with time. It stays. Because losing an average man is easy. Losing a rare man changes her. Losing a grounded man redefines her. Losing a self-respecting man elevates her standards painfully. Losing a man who chooses himself forces her to question whether she ever truly chose herself. In the end, her greatest fear is not losing you. Her greatest fear is knowing she may never again feel the way she felt when she was with you, because men like you do not come twice. Most men spend their whole lives trying to be unforgettable. They chase. They perform. They please. They contort themselves, hoping someone will finally see their value. But here's the truth. Almost no one understands. A man does not become unforgettable by trying to be remembered. He becomes unforgettable by refusing to abandon himself. It's not what you gave her. It's not what you did for her. It's not the messages, the effort, the affection, or the time. It's the standards you held. It's the boundaries you enforced. It's the silence you mastered. It's the calm you carried. It's the man you remained even when she tried to shake you. Women don't remember the men who tried to win them. They remember the men who won themselves. And if there is one message I want you to take from this video, it's this: you become unforgettable the moment you stop negotiating your worth. Because a man who knows his value, who honors his mission, protects his peace, stands firm in his identity, and walks away when respect is violated, that man will live rent-free in any woman's mind long after the relationship fades. Not because she lost him, but because she could never replace him. So, if you want to be unforgettable, stop chasing validation. Stop bending to fit into someone else's story. Stop giving energy to people who haven't earned you. Become the man who chooses himself, and you will never be forgotten. If this message hit you, if you felt something shift inside you, if you finally understand why certain women could never let go of you, then you're exactly the kind of man we built this community for. Inside, you won't just learn psychology. You won't just learn attraction. You won't just learn emotional discipline. You will learn how to become a man whose presence shapes the room and whose absence rewrites the story. A man with a mission. A man with standards. A man with unshakable self-respect. Not for her. Not for anyone else. But for you. If you're ready for that transformation, if you're ready to rise beyond emotion, beyond fear, beyond attachment, click the link below. Enroll once. Grow forever. Become unforgettable.